I got one question. I don't have a banner for it, but I did want to talk about it. And, I wanted to talk a little bit about what, you know, one thing that I've seen with this 49ers is just the depth and the ability to just have guys come in, be plugged in, and uh, go out there and actually like perform, right? And you look at this year's draft, you looked at, I did this thing on Twitter where I talked about every single year since 2017, there's been either an all pro or a very impactful player that possibly can be an all pro every single year. And you think about that. And like, if I just didn't look at that and actually do my research, I would have looked at it and been like, 49ers don't draft very well. I don't know why in my mind that was like what I thought. But then when I actually looked at it, I was like, wow, not too many teams hit on this many draft picks. And then you look at just the amount of players that are on their team that are performing, and a lot of them are homegrown. And then I looked at this draft, and obviously Aaron Banks, big question mark. Um, you know, the other the other offensive lineman, big question mark. Sermon, obviously, I think he's going to be good, but obviously injuries, we haven't been able to see that. But you look at Trey, who we've all seen flashes that we think is going to be great. You look at Mitchell, who obviously already we think is great. Then Ambry Thomas, you look Lenore. These are Hafunga. These are guys that are like impact players that are going to be rotational guys for this team for a long time. Then you look at every single draft, there's guys like that, whether it be, the receiver from last year that got drafted with Ayuk in the 7th round. Jennings. They just have these type of players. And then on top of that, the midseason additions, whether it be Jordan Willis, who was a steal for a 6th round, right? And then Omena, who is playing very well. And then the guys like Alex Mack that they brought in, Trent Williamson. So can you talk a little bit about how you look at the 49ers, just brass as well as coach, the way they've built this team, and what is your perspective on it? Because I think early in the season, both of us were kind of thinking, 49ers missed so much, but when I took a step back, I'm like, they really don't. They actually draft extremely well, much better than a lot of other teams, I would say.
Yeah, well, there's actually I looked this up about 2 months ago. There's actually a page that puts together stats on drafts and hits and misses, and it takes into account your capital that you have and how well these players play. Now, keep in mind, I love the way that they do it on this website, and I have to find it afterwards and get it over to you. But they wait until 2 years are played by these players before they make a full judgment. So keep in mind, this is 17, 18, and 19 is all they have, because 20 they will do after this year, and then 21 they'll do after next year. But ultimately, when you take into account the draft capital that the 49ers have had and how many hits and misses they've had, they rank right about around 15 in the league. So not amazing, right? But they're okay. Like, they're right in the middle of the pack. So it's hard. Drafting is hard, and it's not an exact science by any means, but the draft hasn't been as horrible as what maybe the perception is, but it also hasn't been amazing. Now, what I'm going to say is, I think the way that they develop players once they're in the building, that's where I'm impressed. You talk about guys like Willis, Amenahu, Arden Key. I mean, really, we're just talking about the defensive line. Chris Kocurek is a freaking wizard, first of all. We talked about losing D'Amico Ryans. Well, if Kocurek's here, I'm good. If they lose the offensive coordinator and Bobby Turner's still around, I'm good. Because to me, I think these are real crutches of these coaching staffs, the development that these guys put into these players. But it's happened across the board. Azeez Al-Shaair, Dre Greenlaw. It's something that this team does very well. I think they develop very well. They know that these players are only going to be good for them. They're willing to move on from some of these players instead of paying them. And then they know that they can bring in somebody else that'll play just as good. They'll get them up to snuff, and then they can rinse and repeat every single year. And I think that's where they've done the best job. I think they've set themselves up for success. They have a good mix of veterans with young players. They have a good mix of really high paid players with a bunch of inexpensive guys. They've done a really good job. And when you look at teams like the Green Bay Packers, the Saints, the Rams, these teams that have competed for multiple years, the Chiefs, they're in salary cap hell coming this next year. The 49ers have been able to compete, and they're not in that hell whatsoever. Now, they have a lot of free agents, right, which helps free up some of that space. But that being said, they're going to have plenty of money to play around with. They're going to be able to push contracts, extend guys, do whatever they need to do to make it work out. So for me, I think that they've done a very good job of building the team, doing a good mix, but most of all, just outright coaching these players and getting the best out of them. That's where they've done the best job.
My girl Melissa jumping in. Coach Embry is underrated for the tight ends.
Yeah.
Definitely, Melissa. Glad you could join us. Low the Truth, Bobby Turner is a RB guru, not only with coaching them, but finding them in the draft, man. He knows exactly what he's looking for. And if you pick somebody after the 4th round and you see him go after somebody, you're probably all other draft rooms around the league are probably like, what did we miss? Like, what did we miss? Yeah, man. I mean, I look at this season and I just have been really impressed, man. You know, bringing in a guy like Alex Mack, who beginning of the season, it looked like a bad move. And then, you know, now it's looking like exactly what we expected, right? That offensive line has played a lot better. Tom Compton had a really bad game last game, but he hadn't been, that was the worst game that he's had since he's gotten moved up. And then they took a lot of players in this draft, like Trey Lance, who had a year off from football, Ambry Thomas, who had a year off from football. And it seemed like they had a plan with them, because it looks like Ambry Thomas, if he played football, would probably be a 1st or 2nd round draft pick, which is what I kind of was saying initially. And it looked like me when he played early. I know you said, you know, he's looking good now, but when he did actually start in the beginning of the season and he was getting blown up, right? He wasn't looking good at all. And obviously that makes sense if you haven't played competitive football for a year, right? Because he forego his last season due to COVID. But it looks like they're going to have guys that this upcoming year or even end of this season are going to be really, really impactful players moving forward. And I'm just very happy with a lot of these things that at least for me, looking back, I didn't think of them as strengths initially. And now I'm looking at them and saying, there's a lot of things that have transpired over this season where I'm like, the 49ers are a very well-run organization. The coaching staff there is good. The way they're drafting, it seems like everybody's on the same page. Couldn't have asked for much more, right?
Yeah, I think going into the season, we said without question, you have to take a corner round 2. Like, you have to take a corner. Now we're looking at it going, Ambry Thomas is pretty good. Like, you don't have to take a corner round 2 anymore. You're pretty flexible at that spot. So we're saying, hey, maybe it's better to take a pass rusher again, right? Like, that's how good Ambry's been. And then you can go sign a veteran corner. So, yeah, I feel like those late round hits are, I mean, year in and year out, there's something about it. It saves a lot of their drafts, but it doesn't matter whether you hit early, you hit late, just hit. Like, that's all it comes down to. So I'm with you. There's some pretty good questions in the chat right now.
Yeah, I was about to do some of those. So, Niner by nature, do we bring Mostert back? What do you think?
God, I'm gonna say no. I personally wouldn't bring him back, because if it's me, I would rather bring back Jeff Wilson Jr. than Mostert. I mean, Mostert's amazing, but that dude, he just can't stay healthy whatsoever. And I think if I'm choosing between the two, I think Wilson will be a little bit cheaper, and I think that he's just a little bit more durable and can do a little bit more. Right? He can play fullback in some of those situations. I think he's a little bit better pass catcher. So I personally, Elijah Mitchell's the guy. If I'm gonna have somebody compliment him, it's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. But who ultimately knows? Like it
Yeah, I
seems like
mean,
he's still a part of the team, right?
for sure.
For everything that's going on, he's definitely a part of it. He's tweeting out how excited he is that they're going to the NFC Championship. So I feel like he wants to come back. We'll see.
Yeah, it's much different from McKinnon, right? McKinnon was ready to get out of here
Right.
when the season was over. And it's going to be interesting if Kansas City wins and he comes back to the 49ers. I wonder how the 49ers are going to treat him. But
Mhm.
I think you do bring Mostert back. I think he's going to come back on a steal of a deal, kind of like how they were able to get Verrett back, because I don't think they're going to I think they'd rather I think Mostert understands he'd rather be able to, just like Verrett thought, I know this system and I'll take a 1-year prove it deal to be able to showcase in a system where I know if I'm healthy, I'm going to look very, very good to get that big contract. I really don't think he's going to get big money anywhere else because one, the running back class is always you could always find a running back that could do very, very well. So why would you take somebody that you haven't seen play at all during the season and give them big money, right? So I think you could get Mostert back on a bargain, and he's still, if healthy, amazing. Like the best running back for this system. Like it's been proven, right? So I think that him and Mitchell is good. And right when Mostert was there, they didn't really know how good Mitchell was going to be. Now that they know how good Mitchell is going to be, they could not rush Mostert back, right? They could keep him healthy. They could limit his touches and stuff like that, and just give the ball to Mitchell, who, fun fact about Mitchell, still is the only running back left in the playoffs that hasn't lost a fumble. Pretty amazing,
Don't do
right?
it. Don't say it.
Hey
Don't
man,
say
I'm
it.
not a
You
TV
just
announcer. I don't jinx it. Um,
golly. I will say this, kind of to your point. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem like Shanahan is willing to give carries to anybody but Elijah
Mitchell.
Mitchell right now. So maybe if Mostert comes back, he would slow down the pace that Elijah's on himself and say, "All
Mhm.
right, we're going to give Mitchell 17 touches a game, and we're going to give Mostert 8, and then
And
we'll
I
give Debo his 4 or 5." And I think that would work out fantastic.
and I like Mostert better as the second or third option versus the first option. I think it's just impossible for defenses to keep up if he's
Yeah.
like your second option. That year in 2019, when he was behind Coleman and Breida, was when he was like shining, right? So I
Mhm.
like that a lot better. Low the truth, Jesse and Sunil, how much is the cap hit if we release Jimmy G? He might
Not a
not be
lot.
tradable.
No, it's not a lot. It's only like $2 million. But also his no trade clause is gone going into next year. So that was a big reason why it was harder to trade him this offseason as well. He won't have a no trade clause coming up. So they really can do whatever the hell they want with him. If the
Yeah.
Texans want him, he can go there. Like, and he has no say so.
He's gonna get traded. There's a lot of teams that are eyeing him,
Yeah.
and fan bases. I watched the playoffs with a diehard Eagles fan, and he was like, "I don't understand why you'd want to trade Jimmy. I would take him in a heartbeat." I was like, "We'll give him to you. What do you guys? What are you guys willing to give? We'll give you Jimmy, no
Yeah.
problem."
Golly.
Melissa said, "I think Trent Williams has a huge good effect on Lake and Tomlinson, Alex Mack. Still want a center. Never want to go through that center 2020 merry-go-round ever, ever, ever again."
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree with that.
I think center is going to be a definite draft pick in this upcoming draft.
Yeah, somebody that can play center and guard would be ideal, right? Because if Mac's gonna stick around, he should still be the center, and
Mhm.
then this guy can play guard. Especially if they do lose Lake and Tomlinson. Hopefully they don't, but maybe they do. And so he can play guard, and then as soon as Mac retires, he can kick over to center or just be versatile. And a lot of these guys coming out can play both positions, so I think that would be ideal.
Right. Kim, I don't want to see any perpetually injured players resign. I appreciate Verrett and Mostert. That is true,
Kind of where I'm
but
at.
I do think if you're just keeping them on as fillers versus, I think the issue was before when they were re-signing injured players. These were the only options that they had. These were the starters that they were re-signing. If you're looking at bringing back Verrett, bringing back Mostert as depth pieces, then you're like, okay, that's fine, because if you can get anything out of them, and we're talking about on team friendly deals, not like big money deals, right? But if you
Yeah.
can get a Verrett and Mostert and get something out of them, I think that's much better, especially with how well they know the system. Then, especially because we have guys like Mosley for corners. Mosley and Ambry Thomas are going to be the starters next season. If you could get Verrett there and limit his, or he could stay somewhat healthy and play half the season, even, that's not a bad situation.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I guess the flip side of that argument for me is they're still taking up a roster spot. And the way that I look at it is you could bring in somebody that is young, healthy, that you can develop. Let's trust the development of the team. We just went off for 10 minutes praising it.
Mm-hmm.
Bring in somebody that can be with the team all off season. So that way, when those injuries do inevitably happen, these guys can step in and be ready and be a part of the franchise for many years versus some of these other veterans that, hell, if they go down like they normally do and the guys in front of them get injured, now you're bringing in somebody off the street who you didn't have time to work with during the offseason, and things can get very dicey, just like what we saw with the Drake Kirkpatrick. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. For me, I understand the money would be cheap, but at the same time, like, you're still eating up a roster spot. And if you can't stay healthy, that roster spot could have went to a young kid that got to be here all off season, 4 or 5 weeks into the regular season. You've been able to make a mark on this player, get him to be very, very solid, know the system, and grow with the team. So that would be the reason for me why I'd be willing to let those guys walk, even if they make $500,000 next year.
Melissa shooting from the rafters with this one. I
Yeah.
still think we should trade Juice and get something for him. We have Hockett and we have RBs and tight ends who can do other stuff as he gets used to the league. And look, Trent Williams is a new fullback for the 49ers as well. So maybe we could just put Trent in as fullback and get somebody else for left. No, I'm just kidding. But what do you think about what Melissa's saying? Trade Juice. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm looking it up right now because I want to be intelligent about it. I don't want to just spew one way or the other. I want to see what the cap hit is. Yeah, you can't trade Juice. Too much dead cap. So not going to happen. You actually wouldn't save much money at all. Like, we're talking less than $1 million. So it's not worth it. Your potential out is after the 2023 season. That's when you would want to get rid of them because the dead cap is low. That's the buyout. That's the spot in the contract where you can dump them. Juice is still young. My thing with Juice is it's less about him and more about the usage. They don't use him enough. It's wild to me, and he's such a freaking weapon. Like, use the guy. So
Niner by nature is thinking like I'm thinking. Mitchell, Mostert, Debo.
don't forget about Lance.
And Trey Lance, right? That's a nasty, nasty combination that I think defenses all around the league would fear, right? To have to deal with. He also says, give us a first for Jimmy.
I wish.
Of course, we'll take it. I trade Jimmy to the Eagles for one of their 3 2022 first round.
Get our first round pick back.
Yeah, right? That'd be awesome. Yeah, it looks like I had one idea, and I don't know if we should save it for the offseason, but I will just talk about it before we go. So Devontae Adams is free agent, probably going to get franchise tag. But if there was a way that maybe would you do something where you trade a guy like Ayuk and maybe a low round pick to Green Bay if you could get something for Devontae?
Devontae would be amazing, but I really believe in Ayuk. I do. And the fact I don't think building a team by paying 2 wide receivers $23+ million is the way to go.
Right.
And you're gonna have to pay
Debo's
Debo.
getting that money, right? Yeah.
Right. If you didn't have to pay Debo for like 2-3 more years, I would be all about it. Like, let's say this was Debo's, I don't know, his rookie year, I would be all about it. But I can't see building a team paying 2 receivers that kind of money. No way.
Unless it's in Bitcoin. then you're only paying him what,
Yeah,
35,000.
exactly.
Niner by nature. Do you trade Kinlaw by the draft or keep him? I
I
think
think you just
Kinlaw.
gotta keep him,
Keep
man. You
him. Yeah,
gotta
you
keep
can't.
him. Yeah,
You invested a first round pick. You're not going to get anything higher than a sixth round pick.
fifth
Nobody's
or
seen what he's
sixth. Yeah,
capable of. So I think you can't buy high and sell low and think of it as a win, right?
yeah,
He's already, he's on a rookie pay scale. So if you could get anything out of him, you got to do what you did with Solomon Thomas, right? Keep him all through that fifth year and then, let him go if he still hasn't shown anything, which, Kinlaw at this point is kind of like a luxury, right? Because the defensive line is doing so well without him. If he can come in and do anything, all it does is make things better. But yeah, you got to keep him.
for sure.
Cool. Well,